This meeting of the November Transportation Advisory Committee for Oregon City will now start. Kim, would you do the roll call, please?
I will do the roll call. Let's see. Ben Simmons.
Present.
Vance Tong.
Present.
John Anderson is not here yet. Tim West is not here yet. Ray Atkinson.
Present.
Henry McEnroth.
Here.
Bob LaSalle is not going to be here, and Chetamir is not here yet.
Well, with that, we're shy of a quorum right now.
We've got 50%.
Okay, well then let's go on and do the minutes. Anybody have anything they want to make changes on in the minutes? Not hearing anything. Anybody want to say if they're okay and approve them?
Move we adopt them as is.
Well, we'll second it and move on. And that should move us to the citizen comment.
Yep, and I did not have any new citizen comments for this meeting.
Then move on. I guess we move on to the next item,
Which I believe will take us to the Public Works report. And John, are you going to start it off, or Vance, are you starting it off?
I believe I am, Kim.
Okay.
Let's see, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. And it's full screen Transportation Advisory Committee Public Works Report?
Correct.
All right. Okay, we put this slideshow together. It's got quite a few slides. So we'll go through it quickly. I think we're going to spend most of our time on the neighborhood traffic concerns. And really the first topic is, first two topics Vance is going to take on. So Vance, you want to talk through this one?
Sure. So the last couple TAC meetings, we had a fair amount of conversation about Glen Oak Road. Couple different things with Glen Oaks and speeding concerns, and parking was a big one also. Since that meeting, we have drafted a letter to Carla Owens, and I believe Kim sent that to the board members. Have you gentlemen had a chance to read that yet?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm going to have a question about Glen Oak when you get through with that part of it.
You bet, Henry. As you see on the PowerPoint in front of you, the time that our speed box is up there, we kind of 16,872 vehicles for that time. As we've talked about in I believe the last staff meeting, the average speed was 29.35. We had one slowpoke at 10, and then we had Henry in his sports car going through at 66. 85th percentile is 37. 50th percentile is 31. And this is a 35-mile-per-hour road. There are speed humps on the road. I checked those out myself. There was a question from Carla on if they were still intact. They are showing somewhere, but actually pretty minimally for a street with that traffic count. All the speed signs are clearly visible. So again, the data is showing us that speed really is not a big issue on Glen Oak. There was a question on if we would allow a speed hump to be put on Glen Oak today. The answer is no. I did double check on our city website that talks about the speed hump process and the parameters that a road needs to meet to have a speed hump on it. And since it's a 35-mile-per-hour road, we would not allow that happen this day. That being said, we have no intention of removing the speed hump. In regards to the parking, myself and Kim did reach out to code enforcement. They typically do not patrol and enforce after hours. The recommendation from Nancy Bush, who runs our code enforcement division, was that a couple things. If citizens observe people being parked illegally, as we've seen some pictures before, that they take a picture of that and get it to the police department, which code enforcement is located in the same building. And the other that's probably really the most important and probably would yield the best results is if they see somebody be, parked where they're not supposed to be, to call the non-emergency line, which is 503-655-0211, I think. Is that right, Kim?
8211, 655-8211.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So again, this is kind of, I think really the big wrap up for this was the letter that Henry and I signed and we sent to Carla. She has since responded back, thanking us for our efforts, and is hoping that with the opening of Myers Road, that it takes a little heat off Glen Oak Road in regards to speeding and traffic counts. So with that, Henry, you had a question?
I did, and you guys aren't going to be able to answer it right now, but what struck me is that with Myers Road coming online, we're going to have two main roads that are paralleling each other, maybe a quarter of a mile apart or less. Would there be a chance of taking Glen Oak Road and lowering its classification into something more residential? And it would have to go through the comp plan and all that. But it's a thought that I was thinking about, that maybe it would be appropriate.
It could be. I think that's something that Dana and John and I can look into. As you well know, Henry, there's a lot of things that would need to happen to lower the classification of that road. But it's certainly something that I think once Myers gets open and is open for a while, and I don't know what a while is, whether that's 6 months or a year, but let it get some time being open, and we can do some more traffic speed data and traffic counts on Glen Oak, because we have that existing data that's recent, and we can compare that data to when Myers is open, and look at the data and see if it makes sense to go down that road to change the classification and have the conversation, what would the classification be lowered to. So the answer is yes, I think we can look at that, but I do believe it would behoove us to wait, get some time with Myers open.
I would certainly support not doing it until virus is taken care of and the road's been open for a year or so the traffic patterns can get reestablished.
Yeah, agreed.
I'd also add the college reopening most classes too would be helpful.
Yep. Any other questions on Glen Oak? Okay.
Hey Vance, this is John Anderson. Can you hear me?
Yes, John, how are you?
I'm good. Sorry, I got in here just a few minutes late, and for some reason I can't see what I normally see to put my photo up, but you can caught me present. I'm here. I'm listening to what's going on.
Very good. Thank you, John. Okay, Frontier Parkway. I know we have Matt who is listening. There you are. Hello, Mr. Dale. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you.
Good, good. We did receive the emails from yourself and Heather, the Settlers Point Homeowner Association president. And thank you very much for those. Your questions and comments really help, guide us in what we need to look at in addition to what we already thought we needed to look at. So thank you. I think to start off with, we recently had our what we call our covert speed box on Frontier Parkway. And what that one is, Matt, is the police department owns it. We install it, put it up, take it down. And it's not a speed trailer where motorists see a big speed trailer and they see their speed displayed and slow down. This is a box that nobody knows it's there but us and the police. And we placed it. John, if you could move your cursor just to the right. Yeah, right there. North. There's exactly right there, John. Thank you. There's a street light pole right there that we mounted it to. And the police department has told us it does capture traffic going both directions. And excuse me, I'm trying to pull up another, John, you can leave your PowerPoint up there, please. Just bear with me just a quick moment. We pulled some speed data and there we are. Sorry about that. It was up for exactly 1 week. The total vehicles it captured was 7,594. The minimum speed captured was 10. The maximum speed it captured in that week was 42. The average speed is 21.1 miles per hour. 21.01 actually is the average speed. 50th percentile is also 21. The 85th percentile is 25. So based on that week's worth of data that we just recently took, it was week before last, that is what that covert box picked up as far as speeds. And I'm trying to get back to the PowerPoint. And I'm not getting back to the PowerPoint. Hang on. Sorry, folks. There we go. Okay. So again, that's the data we picked up from our covert speed box. What you're looking at on the screen, folks, is data that was taken from our last traffic count, which was in 2017. You can see on the Myers Road and the red box is where that device was placed. At that time, they counted 2,489 vehicles with some pretty low speeds. And that, I'm assuming, is because it was so close to the intersection. If you move to Jesse Avenue at Leland, they captured 790 vehicles at that location. So it's interesting when I look at that data of obviously how many more vehicles came in onto Frontier Parkway from Myers, and then either probably primarily went into the neighborhoods. Some folks went into the park and then back out Frontier, because that's quite a bit lower number traffic count on Jesse. So I found that to be interesting. I found that the speeds down at Jesse to be interesting also at 85th percentile at 27 northbound and 28 southbound, because I had John indicate where we put the speed camera recently, it's actually much wider and in my opinion, more conducive to cars going faster if they chose to. But at any rate, that data is from 2017. Ours was just done recently to capture speeds. Currently, as you know, Matt, there are 2 speed humps there existing. I did drive Frontier the other day. They seem to be holding up well. Signage seems to be very visible up and down Frontier Parkway as far as speed signs, street name signs. So, I think there's a couple things that we could ponder doing and have discussions on to potentially reduce speed. That would be looking into another couple of speed humps, maybe more down towards where the park is. We could also look into doing, I think they call it a family-friendly zone. We did this in Kenema recently, where we changed the speed limit from 25 to 20. I think that's something that we looked into also. A larger, more long-term thing we could look at would be a traffic calming device, kind of referred to as a bulb out, where you basically make sort of planter areas on the sides of the street that bulb out to give the perception that the roadway is narrower than it really is. There have been studies shown that that does help reduce speed a little bit, but there are some negatives to that too. It does take away parking. It is much more difficult to sweep around, and you have to be very careful in placement of those in regards to catch basins. So that's one that I think we'd really have to vet out quite a bit before we'd consider. But I think, again, potentially the addition of a couple speed humps in and around the park. Also, I noticed, I went back and looked at Google Maps and some of our older pictures that we have, aerial views. And up until about 2015, there were striped bike lanes. And there was even a striped double yellow in the center lane. And I don't know that this street being a neighborhood street typically they do not justify yellow lines. However, especially in front of the park, it's very wide there. It's 42 feet wide, generally speaking, right in front of the park. And the restriping of some bike lanes in that area could help also with narrowing the drive aisles for northbound and southbound. Currently, there's sharrows that are thermoplastic up and down that area, but there are no more bike lane stripes.
Vance,
Yes.
if it's that wide in that area,
Uh-huh.
would a chicane type alignment be feasible in there? Where, you shift it 5 feet one way for a bit, and then 5 feet the other way for a bit, and then straighten it out again at the ends?
It could. What's interesting, Henry, when I looked at the pictures when the bike lanes were striped, it's wide enough in that area in front of the park that not only did you have your travel lanes, but then you had a bike lane on each side and you had parking on each side.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about a pretty wide piece of roadway here.
That's what brought up the chicane idea.
Yeah, I get you. Henry, are you thinking chicanes in the form of striping or some other kind of device?
Well, it would seem like, you'd want to start out with striping, and if it was something that's feasible, you even throw in some of them plastic barrels so that people don't go straight through the striping. But if it worked out, then it could become a project to sort of do a realignment in the future.
Isn't that what the bulb outs essentially do as well as create the chicane?
In it, sort of, Ben. I think that was Ben. I can't see what's talking.
Yeah.
The bulb outs, again, they mainly just narrow the perception of how wide the travel lanes are, which gives people a tendency to slow down a little bit. The other thing with bulb outs, if they're vegetated, and many times they are, you run the risk of obscuring parked cars and ped traffic, and people, even though there may not be a crosswalk, there's people that could be walking around in there, and so you have to be pretty careful with these bulb outs, in my experience. But they can be effective.
And they're probably quite a bit more expensive than paint would be for altering that.
Absolutely, Ben. If we elected to install some new striping, whatever that looks like, We contract out with Clackamas County to perform our striping. We would just include that into our contract and have them stripe that out.
And is the overall complaint for traffic volume, or is it speed, or is it a combination of both? What's the neighborhood association? What's their discontent right now?
Ben, could you repeat that? I'm not sure I quite.
Is the complaint that we're hearing from the neighborhood association, is that because of traffic volume or traffic speed or both?
It seems like it's both. I mentioned the two emails that we got from Matt and Heather Argender, who's president of the homeowner association, and at least one or both alluded to both speed and traffic volume. If I had to guess, and Matt, please feel free to chime in if you like. It seems like potentially the traffic volume was the bigger issue then.
Yes, that's correct. It's the volume that's the biggest complaint.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
And am I correct that the new volume numbers that we had from the newest box was around 7,500 compared to the 2,500 a couple years ago?
Well, that's 7,500 in 7 days, Ben.
And
Yeah.
what was,
And
okay.
I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. So we had the covert box out there for 7 full days. It went up on a Friday, went down on a Friday. So there might have been a 2 or 3 hour difference from 24, on a 24-hour day, but it was there for 7 days. And that box counted a total of 7,500 vehicles, 7,594. And I did the math, and if you divide that by 7, that's 1,084 cars a day that it picked up at that location.
And the stuff on our screen now, is that a week's worth of time as well?
That's a, John or Dana, that's a day, correct? That's one
correct.
day. Yeah.
Okay.
So if I could speak here, it looks like 2/3 of the traffic exits, if you're coming from Myers Road going towards Leland, 2/3 of the traffic turns off before it reaches the park. And you're saying that this is a wide road and that traffic circles, tell me if I'm wrong, traffic circles slow down traffic. And if indeed there was a traffic circle put over by Jesse Avenue and another one where the first speed bump is by Myers Road, that would slow down things considerably, and you wouldn't have people racing through there. And it does, well, Matt, I can sympathize with you that things occasionally look very fast, but the data is showing that it's pretty close to posted speed limits. But a traffic circle, tell me if I'm wrong, would even slow things down further.
It could slow the traffic, Tim. I'm not sure how much of an impact that would have on the volume of traffic.
The volume won't change at all because there is let's say a couple thousand houses right there in between Frontier Parkway and Leland Road, well, the north part of Leland Road where it comes into Myers again. So, I mean, that's where all the bulk of the traffic is. I mean, that is not going to change. Those houses aren't going away. They are there, and it's just going to be slowing them down as the only alternative here. You're not going to tell them to go away.
So this is John Lewis. Sorry, had to clear my throat there. When we looked at by the way, the data that's showing here is 2017 data. We are on a 3-year rotation for collection of traffic data. We made a conscious decision because of COVID not to do it this year because we knew the numbers would be impacted by COVID travel route or travel numbers and probably not represent the reality. So I still think these are good numbers. There's been more development out there since 2017 along Leland Road, obviously. So there may be some changes that we would see. Matt and the neighborhood's point, I think we hear this regularly, that it's usually more traffic and speeding. And sometimes it's the speeding that's the bigger issue. In this case, that's a little reversed, I think. That speeding is a concern and an issue that was raised by both Matt and the neighborhood, but it is this idea that the traffic that's on Frontier Parkway is pretty heavily influenced by traffic that's not either living along Frontier Parkway or one of the connecting streets. When we looked at this data, we questioned that, and I would say our data is, we got two points, right? Question about whether they turn off before or after the park. We don't really have that, but it doesn't look like there's as much cut. I agree with you, Tim. It doesn't appear like the cut through traffic from folks that don't live in this area is that high. So, I think our data is a little dated. I'd like to have maybe more data, which I think, we can pursue. I feel a little bit like the Glen Oak thing, where there's more to come on this story. I think we're not ready to make any recommendations, but at the same time, we're finding more and more this idea of kind of protecting our neighborhoods is just as important as moving people quickly from point A to point B, right? I think the odd thing about Frontier Parkway and the suggestion that maybe it be closed, that really makes me cringe a little bit, because so much of our system planning is about gridded networks and getting having transportation systems that don't load up. Even Leland Road, some would argue, isn't the facility that we'd like it to be, and Myers Road is not as well. But the idea of closing something like Frontier Parkway is significant, and it would have impacts to a lot of users. I liken it to Claremont. I suspect Claremont Road 10, 15, 20 years ago was kind of similar, right? In that Myers Road I don't remember when Myers Road connected through, but it hadn't been connected through. There's a lot of non-adjacent neighborhood traffic that uses Claremont, but we would never consider closing it. And that's kind of, I think I'd like to, gather more data, look at this, look at options. You mentioned circles, Tim, or not circle. Traffic circles, which I think what you're referring to, I just want to be clear, isn't a roundabout. You're specific about circles being something like what we see in other jurisdictions, where they put a circle at an intersection per se, where there's a wide spot in the road and it's really channelizing the traffic to kind of go around that circle. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay. So, that's another kind of traffic device, and you put enough of those, speed bumps can do this too, right? You put enough kind of those inconveniences along the route, and they not only slow the traffic, but they might discourage that person who would prefer to use, that there may be a shorter route, but it's got more kind of obstacles or inconveniences along it, and so I kind of wonder if that's a little bit where I've Vance and I and Dana have talked a little bit about. I feel like that's probably a better approach than closure. Well, I know it's a better approach than closure. How much of that's warranted, and how we go about doing that. I feel a little bit, this neighborhood in particular, I feel like they have done a good job of paying for, they've paid for both those speed bumps that are out there now. And I was just kind of thinking, you know, if it were something like speed bumps, we could probably justify through the fact that we own a big detention pond along Frontier Parkway, and then we own the park. You know, maybe it's our turn to contribute to that. That would be, you know, something that I think we should consider as we continue to look at Frontier Parkway. The circles are interesting, and we don't have any. This might be a good opportunity for looking at something like that. And I definitely think in those wider spots, something along the lines of, you know, kind of road or lane narrowing would help. But I don't think lane narrowing is necessarily going to be considered a deterrent from those who might use that as cut through traffic or a cut through route. So,
John, if I may make a suggestion for a little bit more data. When I have been in a similar situation, taking multiple counts on various blocks between the north and south, or the up and down in this case, running streets, the intersecting streets, to get enough feel for how many people are coming in off of Myers Road and turning into the neighborhood might be worthwhile, because if that's the case, then the comment about having a gridded system is still valid, but the only two roads that go from Leland to Myers is Frontier Parkway and Warner Milne, or Warner Perry, whichever one.
no, it's Leland.
Yeah, but between Leland and Myers, this is one connector. The next one up is
It's Leland itself. It Leland turns, but it stays.
oh
Leland.
yeah, it's Leland itself. You're right.
Yeah.
But it's not. There's no other connector between there, and that's what, a half a mile.
Yeah, and
Quarter mile.
I drove this just the other day, and with the two speed bumps in there. Now it was midday and there was extremely light traffic, but it's still, even with the two bumps, was enough that, you know, if I was going to be making a move from those new neighborhoods over by the airstrip there, that I would take, you know, Leland is definitely the course of least resistance. So I'd be curious what the traffic numbers would show of what the actual number of cars using it as a pass through. And, you know, and this might just be a situation where, you know, population has grown in the area and it's local users that are actually causing the additional, you know, traffic volume.
I don't know, you know, we took a run at these family-friendly streets a couple of years ago, and I think the commission had some concern about them being confusing, but then we took another run at it more recently with the Kenema neighborhood, and there was pretty strong support there. I think Frontier Parkway and Jesse have some potential for that. I think that if the request, especially if it came from the neighborhood, and then with the data that I think, Henry, I kind of agree with you. We've got these two data points. The only other data points we have are on Leland down near McCord, and then on Myers Road. So there's some pretty big data gaps in here, and, you know, with all the connecting through streets that have developed over the years, we probably should add a couple spots to our regular monitoring. But I just want to, Matt, I want to be certainly clear with you in the neighborhood that protecting neighborhoods from, you know, unruly traffic is important. I've heard it from the commission, and I know the TAC is has traditionally been pretty up on that, but the idea of, you know, creating less connected routes, whether they be pedestrian routes or drive-through routes, has not necessarily been something that has been supported. You know, but I like us to tread lightly on that when we're talking to the neighborhood, because I don't want them to think that we're just, you know, blind to their concerns. I'd like to work with Vance and Dana to try to collect more data here. I still have a little bit of concern about the COVID trips. So, you know, any kind of traffic counting right now, there's not too many agencies that are doing traffic counts right now. And I mean, those numbers that Vance produced on the recent, those numbers are much less than what we collected in 2017, which to me gives an indication of what COVID numbers are really kind of looking like right now anyway. You know, I don't want to lose sight of this. I think it's just, we need more time and consideration, and hopefully, Matt, you and the neighborhood kind of understand that. And I guess consensus from the TAC would be helpful too on that. Just keep an
Well,
eye on this
John-
one, try to get new data when our traffic numbers move back to normal. That makes sense?
So
Absolutely.
how about setting a date? Just have a motion setting a date 6 months from now, or whatever you think is logical to take that second look.
Put it on an agenda in 2021. Is that what you're talking about, John? Just
Yeah,
to
yeah,
make sure we don't lose sight of it? Yeah.
Correct.
And John, between now and that future date, is it possible, it wouldn't be a volume thing, but a percentage of vehicles coming in from Leland and from Myers, what percentage of those are turning off into the neighborhood versus a pass through? Is that, because we could still get a ratio to kind of figure out if this is a localized problem or if it's truly being used as a, you know, a pass through.
Do you have comparison numbers for Leland Avenue to the north? Or what is it, to the west, right there? So how many, what's your traffic comparison on that road versus Frontier Parkway?
Yeah, I think, no, we don't have great numbers, Tim, to tell you that. The closest one we have is on Leland, further to the, I guess it'd be to the northwest and near McCord. So I think, you know, taking a variety of counters at the same time would make sense to try to analyze that, maybe get some recommendations for how to analyze that from John Replinger, who we use from time to time for some of these kind of neighborhood issues. So I'm open to that. And I like the idea of putting it on the calendar in sometime before, we take our summer break in July, don't we, Henry? I can't remember what months we.
Generally speaking,
Yeah, so
July and
maybe
August have
maybe
been way too hot to go to meetings.
maybe we shoot for a May meeting. Can you put that down for us, Kim?
Yep.
Okay. If that's
Okay.
okay. Do we lose Matt? Matt, can you share that with the neighborhood?
This is Matt Dale, and yes, I will. I think the HOA concurs with waiting for the COVID impact to resolve before a traffic count. And I want to say, on behalf of the neighborhood and for myself, we very much appreciate the amount of detail and consideration you're putting into our neighborhood. And so thank you to each of you.
And thank you for willing to work with us, because it's not one of those things where we can wave a magic wand and make everything better. We wish we could.
Yep, very much understood.
So if there's anything, if it's okay, should we move on?
Certainly.
So Henry, I'm just going to bang through kind of a variety of updates. And I tried to follow the agenda order a little bit, but it might be out of order, but I'm going to try and cover it all pretty quickly so that we can get home. Or some of us can get home. Some of you are already home. All right. So just this is real quickly. I-205, you're familiar with the, I want to say it's 7 miles of improvement, including Abernathy Bridge. The real, I presented this to the CIC the other night, and I just wanted to make sure it was still on your understanding. There's a project website there where I really encourage you to go to find more information. We're actually hearing from ODOT. We're in the middle of our pretty detailed plan review. So their design team's moving forward with design work on that project. But I just really kind of quickly wanted to mention it.
A question, John, a question.
Huh?
Has, just out of curiosity, has the sewer plant outfall project been compared to the ODOT project to see if there's any interference with anything?
Yeah, the two are working together. There was a period of time when they were trying to get the sewer plant project incorporated into the ODOT project, and that still may be out there, but they're well aware of each other's projects.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Just tolling and congestion pricing, that topic's still out there. I again wanted to share the website because the two projects are while they're very much related, they're also addressed in websites and projects differently. So it's a different website for tolling and the tolling discussion. And the other, there's lots of community concern about the fact that we're not being heard, and I don't know that that's true necessarily, but we put together a detailed response or comment letter. Dana put most of that effort together. There's a lot of people that commented on it, but she put it together for the mayor and the city manager to sign. I want to say that letter is, I can't remember if it's online or not. It must not be because I didn't provide an email or a website address for that. But Dana, do you know, is it online right now, that tolling letter?
I don't think the final version is, but the draft version that we took to City Commission for a head nod is in a packet. And I don't remember which day we took it.
It was a 9-page letter though, and really went into a lot of detail about why we thought tolling had some real problems for Oregon City. And that was just ours. Just about every agency in Clackamas County, including the Clackamas County and the C4, put together various versions of that letter, raising lots of concerns about tolling. So just know that that's out there. I think the agency folks are doing a good job of sharing through the public comment period about our concerns, and we'll see how that plays out. And I just wanted to share that.
Is the goal of this letter you're referring to stop tolling but allow construction to continue? Is that, like, I'm wondering how the funding for the bridge is related to tolling with letter. Does that make sense?
How would you fund the project if they didn't implement tolling? Is that what you're asking, Ray?
Correct. And whether the letter is saying we don't want to do tolling because we only want to use, I guess, non-tolling funds to pay for the bridge. Is that what the letter is trying to say? Like, I haven't read it, but I'm just curious about what letter is trying to advocate for.
The letter's pretty lengthy, and the letter's not suggesting we don't need a project. I think everybody's in agreement that we need a project for lots of reasons: moving of traffic, commerce, etc., economic development, safety. The questions, the biggest, there was 3 key points, and I didn't want to go into that much detail on it, but it basically said, why that's the first tolling. Why is our project being asked to be funded through tolling? And just recognizing the impacts of diversion, that was a big issue as well. I can't remember the third big point, but there was 3 big points and lots of subpoints in that letter, and it was basically suggesting that we need the project, it needs to be funded, but we are really questioning this decision about tolling.
That's what I was wondering.
And
Okay.
only tolling along I-205.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Just kind of an update. Funding continues to be a challenge, and lots of searches, a lot of effort goes into funding. Dana sits on a variety of committees that kind of helps us be informed about what funding options are out there. But just remember, we're still heavy involved in Moala Avenue, and I'll give you an update on that project. But that grant is funding that we're spending right now, that $3.8 million. The other grant that we are awarded, yet to spend and yet to start the project on, but is a planning project to look at how to move bikes and pedestrians along 99E between 10th Street and the railroad bridge, or I think the better piece is the waterfront path. So that's a $673,000 grant that we were awarded to study how we would, I think the big pinch point is the Oregon City Westland Bridge. How do you get around, under, over, whatever we're going to do there, and then the bridge deck that's along 99E, really between 8th Street and 9th Street. So anyway, that's a project that'll be moving forward, that those funds are secured. And then the other one that's secured is this All Roads Transportation Safety Grant for $1.1 million. There is some discussion about, those are federal funds right there. If we found a way to do what we call a fund swap, might see a little less money, but it would be easier for us to manage. If we do it federally funded, ODOT manages the project. This photo is a representation of what that project consists of. Obviously, there's lots of signal upgrades along Beaver Creek Road, and there's a kind of a warning or advanced warning signage along 213. There's some just signal controller improvements that would help, really make things a lot more safe. So that's a great project. It's guaranteed. It's just a question of whether or not we can do a fund swap that would, pretty much put that project in our hands to deliver, and would result in less kind of federal oversight and reporting.
So John, could you clarify that the Willamette Falls shared use path, so $673,000 is just going to go into a study on how to go ahead and make that sidewalk usable for bikes and pedestrians, which is only a quarter mile long from 10th Street to where the mill is right now?
Yeah, and it's as my recollection, it's a little more than a study, but it's not a design. And Dana knows lots about it, so I might defer to her. But there's a fair amount of work. What I don't recall if it includes geotechnical evaluations or not, but a lot of effort, a lot of public involvement in that. So yeah, it's a challenging piece. A lot of agency, that's an ODOT facility. There's, if you're familiar with that stretch of road, it's pretty complicated. With
it's all cantilevered right there, and yeah, it's difficult to build on, but it sounds like, well, from a layperson's point of view, it sounds like that's about the construction cost of about a quarter mile of bike path.
If that were the case, I think that'd be awesome. But we know that piece is likely going to be, there's environmental permitting involved for sure because of the proximity of the water. again, I think there's a misconception about maybe how complicated that piece of pathway really would be. Would it be cantilevered? Would it be, would there be some in-water work? I mean, that's part of the study. How do you deal with the historic nature of the bridge? And they put a lot of money into restoring that bridge to its historical fashion. So, how do you go around it? I mean, I really think that's the solution. You got to find a way to go around it, but how do you do that in a way so you're going to have that historical group that's going to be out there that's going to want to take a shot at it. So I hear you, Tim. It's a lot of money for a short path, kind of like what we're seeing with the Willamette Falls Legacy project and that riverfront path. They're Oregon City's a challenging little spot, and that one's going to take some effort. Dana, you got anything to add?
So that work would really, like John mentioned, it would have a very large public involvement component. It's our downtown. It's a very important key area to the city. But it would start out, and instead of saying, like on Myers Road, we said we want to build a road, we studied alternatives. We looked at different alignments, and that helps us make the best decision moving forward. And so we would be doing an alternatives analysis of how do we provide that riverside shared use path in a way that works for what the city wants, but also with what ODOT will require because it's their right of way. And then all the environmental permitting, it's a floodplain. So anything we build within, anything permanent that we build in that floodplain, we have to mitigate that so that we don't rise the elevation of the floodwater during a flood. So this money ideally would get us through alternatives analysis, public outreach, and get us to ideally a 30% design from 10th to the tunnel, which would set us up very well for future grant funding for final design and construction.
A point that probably should be made too isn't 99 itself on a bridge at the courthouse? And wouldn't this path have to be somehow either on a separate bridge or on a cantilevered hunk off of the existing one? It's like 100 years old.
Yes, and ODOT has verbally told us we can't cantilever a structure off of the existing viaduct between 8th and 10th, but in our alternatives analysis, we will include that so we have a formal response from ODOT that says this is not viable. So yes, we would look at.
Certainly a new bridge adds cost to any planning effort.
Yes, but Tim, if we can do it for less, we will.
Oh, it's a tar baby. I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move on. So again, some of the grant funding that is kind of in process, we've shared with you and heard from the neighborhood about the Holcomb Boulevard grant. We're still, that's been submitted. We haven't got confirmation of the results of that. We did get some confirmation about this transportation growth management grant. Didn't get that grant, but we're moving forward with the urbanization study anyway. We had some funding that was set aside. It's a smaller project that we were going to use for match. We're going to try and figure out if we can't scale back the scope and just get at least a few streets done in the Park Place area. Oregon Business, a loader road alignment concept plan. There's a $51,000 grant that we're pursuing to complete that. Basically, better figure out the alignment of Loader Road as it intersects with Beaver Creek Road. There's a lot of fractured property there combined with the power lines. We just really kind of want to get, and then again, that's going to have some public involvement as well. So try to figure out where's the right place to put that intersection, and the alignment between, if you've been to the high school, you know, there's a high school lane that takes you kind of around the backside and then up into their parking lot. You know, what's that continuation look like so that it goes from high school lane, kind of makes a turn and goes out to Beaver Creek Road, which would be, you know, the Loader Road intersection. And then we still have received and are planning on the Malal Avenue Cross Street banner. That was a $25,000 grant through the Metro Community Enhancement Grant. And then upcoming, we're pursuing a grant to complete design work of, again, as much of the pathway as we can from the McLaughlin, it's called the McLaughlin to Kenema Trail. It's basically from the promenade up by the, VFW Hall. Thank you, John. To really, you know, into the Kenema neighborhood and up to the children's park. So we've done some of the, again, we reduced the speed limits. We did some sharrows in Kenema, but this is more about, you know, constructing those pathways, figuring out certainty on the alignment, figuring out how the VFW, how we get through the VFW hall without having too much impact on their parking, those kind of things. So that's something we're applying for. I don't remember the amount, Dana, do you?
I feel like we were intending to apply for the full project out of the master plan for that. I feel like it was around 2 million.
And then internally, we're talking a lot about the arts grant and whether or not we, you know, that previous slide, we talked about this arts grant. Arts is all roads, transportation, safety. And so they're already looking at the grant cycle for 2025 to 2028. So we're looking at making signal improvements to all the rest of the signals in town. And I think there was a couple other small projects that we thought might qualify in that grant. So that hasn't been fully developed, but we're looking at it.
Could you tell me about Loader Road and any planned developments that's going to happen right off of there? Is that the site of the new Oregon City industrial park?
It's so Loader Road is an existing road right now that only goes east outside the city into the county, and it is in the Beaver Creek concept plan area, and it's in an area where there is some desire for industry, and so it's kind of that road that goes. It's got the community college to one side, it's got the high school to the other side, and it's got the Beaver Creek concept plan with commercial and I believe industrial lands zoned out in that area. So it's one of the major, you know, Myers Road's intended to connect through Claremont at the college signal. That's intended to connect through, and Loader is intended to connect through. So it's one of those three roads that kind of connect through into the Beaver Creek concept plan. Does that help, Tim?
It does. I know without any bigger vision of the city and other departments that any industrial development is just an idea and that's it. So we're as long as you're ahead of the horse cart, that's good.
Yeah, planning's kind of involved in that one too. So, I mean, yeah, I think that a lot of the challenge with the industrial areas out there is there's not a lot of big parcels that kind of fit that mold between the power lines and again, existing property lines. It's pretty fractured.
But isn't the golf course, Oregon City Golf Course, going to be developed and be an industrial type area, and everything in between there and Loda Road and even towards Albertsons right over there going to be developed at some point?
Yeah, the golf course has got a lot of residential planned on the golf course, but I think there are elements of it that are in either a commercial or industrial zone. I don't quite remember, Tim, but you're right. That whole area out there is proposed for employment. Let's just call it employment lands. I can't recall the lines, whether they're commercial or industrial, but I think there's a pretty big mix out there. And Loda Road's right in the heart of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Into some project information. So Malala Avenue, just kind of reminding folks about the cost of that project. So Carter Contractor was our low bidder, and they're making good progress. We've had a couple of little upsets, but we're trying to work through them in terms of just keeping traffic moving safely, and pedestrians in particular moving safely. It's a pretty long project, and a lot of work going on. So they're currently our main kind of goal is to keep traffic moving, keep businesses open, keep pedestrians safe. Bicyclists, we're preferring that folks use Beaver Creek Road as opposed to Malala. It's really pretty narrow, 2 lanes of travel right now. And at times we've got lots of driveway closures along there. We're trying to make sure the businesses still have decent access, but it's a moving target from day to day, depending on which driveway they're impacting. So Beaver Creek is a good option unless you need to use a business like the post office or something that you can only access along Malala Avenue. We are currently in the first stage of the project. So it's a 2-stage project. They're working on the east side of the road right now, northeast side of the road, and that's considered stage 1. They're working into phase 2, which is working on the water line and really tearing out most of the road grade. They want to get sections of that paved pretty quickly, and we're running out of good paving weather, so that's important for them. And then stage 2 is when they move all the traffic onto the other side and they start, it starts looking a lot more like all the sidewalks on the west side, or pretty much all the sidewalks on the west side, get taken out and replaced. That's not the case for the east side. We're utilizing most of the existing sidewalks on the east side. So anyway, lots of ongoing construction through the winter, through the summer, and hope to complete that in November of 2021 or sooner. Myers Road's a little different story. We're well ahead of schedule on that. It's we've got lots of things that that project's going to provide in terms of benefit. If you've walked the college campus at all, or maybe even walked the project, there's most of the sidewalks are done, all the paving's done, striping's done. I think streetlights went in or are going in this week. There's a couple little sidewalk pieces that need to be finished, but most of it's done. Now they're working on landscaping, and it's going to be a great addition to our transportation network. And I think will really change that area in terms of just how folks use. I think Glen Oak Road is the best example where that's going to change a lot. And I also think just access to the community college with the little community college road. I forget are we naming that, Dana? It's a driveway, or did we put a name on the little road to the community college?
So the connector road is owned by the college, and they have named it John Kersey Way after a previous president of the college. So
A
it's,
question on this one. Is there any reason we couldn't have this like a New Year's present to the city and open it up in January or something?
Well, we had planned to do, Dana was working on a grand opening event for December 15th. Again, that was going to involve the community college because of their kind of sponsorship of the project, and then their own projects, if you will. And so that was going to be a group effort. And with the shutdown, we've kind of pulled the plug on that. I think we'd still like to open it as soon as we can. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people just like to see it open. And so we're trying to get to that as soon as we can, Henry. I like your idea, but I think we're working towards trying to get it open.
We could always have a party when it's nicer.
Yeah, I'm always up for a party. The other project updates. Again, Vance got through the Malala Avenue Pearl Street intersection updates. Those are complete. I think Dana applied for and got the Malala Avenue speed limit. That's been lowered and posted. So I think it's 30 miles an hour, but if you're in the construction zone, we would expect you to be traveling much slower than that. So the South End Road repair project, the county, I don't have a lot of details on that other than the county's been talking to us about detour routes, and we know they've been doing a lot of geotechnical evaluation. The intent is to build some retaining walls on the downhill side of South End Road. And we're talking the hill part, right? Between the mid-level at South Second and up near the top near Barker. So pretty extensive project. It's going to require road closure for some time, I suspect it's a long time frame. I don't know that time frame yet. They haven't shared that, but and they haven't put together any detailed plans yet. It's mostly been geotechnical analysis, but they're starting to look pretty hard at that. So just know that that's going to be yet another challenge when they close South End Road. Trillium Park Drive slide repair. We are moving forward with the design contract with that. We're out soliciting some quote for that and hope to move forward with the design and find the revenue to fix that. The neighborhood really wants that fixed, and we'd really like to fix it. So we're moving forward with that. And unless some other catastrophe comes up, I think we can fund it. And then, of course, our annual pavement maintenance projects. We're planning to do some next year. We didn't do a lot this year because we were allocating most of that funding to the Malala project. But we're in 2021, we're hoping to get some paving projects done. And then we're also putting in the Berkeley Hills Rapid Flashing Beacon. That's under construction right now. Through our development review group, we've been working with Union Pacific. They want to replace their bridge at 12th. So there will be a road closure between Washington. Well, it's really between Center Street and Main Street, but we're going to sign it up near Washington. So most people won't use that. It'll be local access only from Washington down to Center. But that's going to require a bridge replacement there. I don't recall a timeline, but we're pushing them to get that done sooner and opened up sooner. They'll be doing some street improvements for pedestrians under that bridge. So that'll be a better improvement there.
We've got a clearance problem there too, as I recall from when I did my measurements or my look at it a 3 years ago. Is there any way to make sure we're going to have 15 to 16 foot clearance over the street?
We've been working hard to do that, but the answer is no. It's still going to be I guess, undercrossing that's not compliant. So it's going to have height restraints. They've looked at, different bridge types. We asked them to look at lowering the road. I think most of that's not real practical. So I thought what I heard in a staff meeting was they weren't going to make it any worse, but I think that they might make it a little better in the bridge while it's going to be not much wider or narrower than it is today. The kind of the deep section is going to come in a few feet, so that'll help a little bit, Henry, but not much.
Yeah, well, understanding that railroad loads are getting heavier and our traffic, some of our traffic that uses that's getting taller. It just is a concern.
Yeah, I think to raise it, they'd have to go,
I'm half a mile each way.
yeah, pretty long distance in each way. And then that starts messing with 10th Street. So, and then we're out to bid right now for the Gaffney Lane Street widening project. We're supposed to open that on the 20th and have it on the City Commission agenda for award on December 2nd. So
Finally,
that's one project we're hoping to get done. Scraping together our pennies to pay for that.
that's been an eyesore for the last 20 years.
So those are the biggies. I know you guys like updates on those things. So I don't know if you have any other questions about any other projects before I move into facilities. Okay. This is just our facility. I wasn't planning to talk about any other department facilities, but our facility. So if you've driven by First Street, it's well under construction, both the site work and the interior work. So this is just some information that you may have seen before. Nothing's really changed here with regard to our square footages or our budget or our completion date. That's been set and is still on track for some time now. So the front view rendering is shown here. We're basically reutilizing most of the front warehouse, but we're significantly modifying it. It's pretty much just a shell right now. And then the yard space as well, we're doing a lot of changes there in terms of grading and just utilization, dealing with stormwater, and creating some covered parking for, we're pretty equipment and fleet heavy, so we need lots of parking. So anyway, I took these, it's probably 3 or 4 weeks old now, but some of these were construction photos that I shared.
What all's going to move in there?
So in the office building, we'll have all the operations folks, including parks operations and facility folks. City's got 2 people who oversee facilities, and they'll be in that on the first floor. And then on the second floor, all of engineering and all of IT and GIS will be in there. So we'll have several, I didn't share a floor plan, but we'll have several conference rooms and, lunchroom, locker rooms. And then, we're maintaining all the warehouse spaces. We're just modifying them. So we'll have a better fleet shop inside the old warehouse, wash rack inside the old warehouse, some parking, lots of material storage. So I think it's sustainability and it's ultimate because most of the buildings are staying, or all the buildings are staying. It's just that front one's being completely remodeled, and they took off some of the old expansion pieces that were kind of on the exterior of the original warehouse.
And so you're gonna have a party when it's opened up?
I sure hope so. Like I said, I don't need much of an excuse for a party. I know Vance, he's always up for a party. So yeah, hopefully.
Well,
The other thing I wanted to point out, if you haven't been up in our upper yard, there was 2 Camp Adair buildings that were placed out there. They're highlighted in pink. The buildings are gone. And the city commission has directed staff to partition. This doesn't do a very good job of showing the partition, but it's basically, no, it's not a partition. It's a lot line adjustment. So right now the armory's gone too, but the armory site is kind of denoted in this dotted line here. It comes around over to here. And then the rest of this was part of the public works yard, upper and lower. And the city commission has directed staff to do a lot line adjustment that parcels off most of the upper yard with the armory site, and that will become part of Waterboard Park, and it'll be charter park protected. And then of course we'll continue to maintain our lower yard, although that's still a decision that needs to be made too. But for now, they've got the park area, and there's just some question about, the First Street property is about half the acreage that we really kind of were looking for. So I've been trying to advocate for maintaining this piece for us, for our use, for things like bin storage and some of our uses that don't necessarily house staff. But I think that's still a conversation about that facility right there. But just wanted you to know that if you haven't been up there, it's changed a lot up there in the last couple of weeks. And then real quickly, we're working on some public works code amendments, and there's a lot of things in there, but for the Transportation Advisory Committee, we're looking at some what we call long-term temporary obstructions. This has got to do with use of Main Street and maybe some of 7th Street by businesses that would like to utilize the parking strip for things like parklets and outdoor sales for limited dates of outdoors. So there's some code amendments that are associated with that. We're looking at changes to some driveway standards that are too limiting, especially for some of the new allowances in what we typically see single family homes with duplexes and multifamily developments. So fourplexes, for instance. So trying to figure out how to accommodate those and their driveway needs. And then public utility easements, that is got a traffic element to it, in that we have typically required a 10-foot public utility easement along frontages. That's not been codified. It's been in our engineering standards. It's in conflict with what is codified, which is some of the land use requirements for places like commercial districts, where they'd really like to see those buildings put pretty close to the back of sidewalk. So we were having some conflicts with planning on and development on where to put those public utilities. So we've come up with a compromise, which we're including in these code amendments. And really, I just wanted you to know, if you're really interested in code amendments, we've been through the Planning Commission process, so you may have heard about it there if you're monitoring that. We're going to be in front of the City Commission for their first time kind of hearing what we're proposing. Actually, it's not the first time, but it's the first time in a regular meeting. We've done work sessions with them, but they'll be hearing that tomorrow night.
We are in the long-term, what's it called? Temporary obstructions. Is that only for summertime or also wintertime parklets? Like, does it differentiate between the two?
Yeah, so I don't recall the code changes actually having seasons in them, but they allow the use. The parklet design guidelines have the use, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that, Ray. I probably need to open that document up to tell you for sure. But
Okay.
the city commission has made the decision to allow those folks who had applied by a particular date in November to, if they were wanting to pursue use of the parklet through the winter time, they could. There's a lot of conditions associated with that, but yeah, that parklet program has been an option. It's not been heavily utilized yet, but with these kind of eating limitations due to COVID, that's one piece of work that the city commission has really kind of wanted to implement to help with those scenarios.
That's what I'm about. Thanks.
The other one that you might be interested in, and being the Transportation Advisory Committee, is we've been working on transportation impact analysis guidelines update. That's something that's kind of behind the scenes. It's something that our development review group has used for years. It's guidelines that developers are to follow in their pursuit of approval for a development project. And the ones that we've had since 2005. And so we're updating those. I wouldn't say there's too much there that's really that controversial. So it's really inconsistencies that needed to be fixed that we were implementing, but weren't in the guidelines. It's kind of a lengthy document. I didn't want to go through it in too deep, but again, that's about to move forward with the city commission. I want to say it's on the agenda for December 2nd. I didn't put that on here, but so anyway, it's got standards, it's got a nice checklist, and it's a document that Replinger and Associates, who does most of our development review work, he's a transportation engineer. It's kind of the Bible he lives by. And so wanted to make sure you knew that was going.
John Anderson.
Yeah.
Is that what some people consider as a development contract between the city and the new developer in terms of who's doing what when?
It's a guideline that tells the developer's engineer or the traffic engineer what needs to be included in their analysis. So, it's really all about this transportation impact analysis. Certain size developments require a study. Small things like partitions and, smaller commercial developments might only warrant a transportation analysis letter. But these are standards and procedures that tell that guide that traffic engineer who's working for the developer what they need to include in their analysis that we will then review and validate or not. It's all kind of used in that land use approval process. Mentioned parklets. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but if you're interested in parklets and what the city's approved, it's just, this is too long of a website. I recognize that, but you can just Google the city's website, or not Google the city. You can go into the city's website and in the search bar type in parklets and you'll get to the information you need. But we are, like many cities, approving these outdoor seating areas that are actually situated in the parking strip. So the one that exists today is on 7th Street. So if you've driven 7th Street down near the Arch Bridge Tap House, that's the one we have in town. And then Ben, you asked about evacuation routes, and we've heard a lot, both inside Oregon City and outside Oregon City, about the concern that happened with wildfires. So this came together towards the end of kind of as the event was, I wouldn't say winding down, but as they were starting to allow folks back in, there was some discussion about needing, some direction on evacuation routes. And so we worked with our GIS group, and a variety of us put our heads together around, a document that's specific, in this case, to the 2020 wildfires. There's elements of it that would probably work for other events, but evacuation routes. Well, one on this fire thing, there was a lot of kind of feeling like we should be doing something different because of what happened on a few nights of the evacuations for the fire, right? And part of me watched that kind of from the Emergency Operations Center, and we were getting good updates about that while we were kind of thinking about all kinds of things. But I found it interesting that a lot of folks that were not in an actual, in a zone that required evacuation were leaving, right? And part of me wondered if we would have had the problem that we had, if more attention had been paid to, when you really needed to leave. I think the other problem was the state fire marshal. At one point, there was some changing of who was running that operation. And I think someone from outside of Clackamas County was in charge when they made the decision to make everything in Clackamas County a level 2 evacuation area. And that, in hindsight, it's all 2020, but that stirred a lot of people, because it went from a level 3 evacuation, pretty quickly. It jumped into places that were into a zone 2. So I don't know, a lot of folks took that to mean it was time to move, even though it was really time to get ready. And it was just a couple nights of some pretty heavy traffic. And I don't know, given our limited ways across the river, I'm not sure what we could do. When they did make that change, ODOT made some changes to allow a lot more free flow off of 213 onto 205 northbound, and that really helped. So we created this. We have this on file. I think in an earthquake, it'd probably be the inverse of this, right? Everybody would be heading east instead of heading north. So I think I like the idea of evacuation routes, but it's not something we have done a lot of work on.
John, from my perspective, having watched it watch them go by my front door, it was crawling at about 2 miles an hour until about 6 o'clock that night. After 6 o'clock, there was nobody there. It had cleaned out. But having also used that when they moved the bridge on 213, I would suggest that your pinch point would be the connection getting on to McLaughlin. down at South Second. That's a horrible thing to try to get a lot of people through, is that little connection from Center to McLaughlin. What was sent with two main routes coming in and trying to use that one street to get onto McLaughlin.
Well, everything was saturated, Henry, at that time. We were in the fire station set up for our EOC, and police, there was a couple police folks, and they would kind of come in and come out, and they said there's literally no way to get anywhere without going in the opposing lane with lights on. So, you know, everything, Washington, Center Street, South Second, all the connection streets in the downtown, everything was saturated at that point in time and blocked. And I think 205 was saturated at that point in time.
It was a horrible thing.
Yeah, my point that I started to open up with was, you're right. If you could have pushed some of that traffic and held it for a few more hours, right? And it had stayed, people had stayed home for a few more hours that were in that zone 2.
Oh yeah.
It would have been much better. But I think the messaging on zone 2 versus zone 3 versus zone 1 was maybe not well enough established, or maybe people, you know, it was pretty smoky. So, you know, I don't know.
As soon as the alarms went out on the phones, the traffic went up. It was like throwing a switch. But I think we should move on.
We're moved on. Let me figure out how to stop sharing here.
So is this the point where we start moving on to talk about the goals and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, Kim is on here. I didn't get a chance to circle back with Kim. She sent me some things that came in this afternoon.
Yeah, I resent that out to all of you. Basically, those are what you all have sent to me for goals moving forward in 2021. And I can plug that into future annual reports and help facilitate, you know, making sure that we actually get those goals done and accomplished.
I couldn't open the document that you sent out this afternoon, but I'm going to make the suggestion that we just go ahead and put them all in as being worthy, and then work on them as best we can over the next period.
I guess my thought on that, Henry, is that most of them I thought were fine. I think there was some of them that were, you know, pretty aspirational, and I'd want to have, you know, I don't like to just, I want to be able to make sure we're measuring our accomplishments in a way that we feel successful with. And I don't want to see, you know, staff inundated either. My hope was that we could study those a little bit. I didn't spend much time with them, I'll tell you that. Okay. But it'd be nice to kind of have either a subcommittee or bring them back at a future meeting and spend more time with them.
Then why don't we schedule it for December or January, whichever we decide to do.
Okay.
It wouldn't be the first time we had goals presented in May or something.
Yeah. And I think that, like a lot of the goals from looking at the previous annual reports, you know, they have to fall in line with the commission goals, if I'm not correct. And so I don't know if those goals are going to change, John, or that you know of. I don't know.
We're waiting for a new mayor to be elected in March to decide the commission's goals.
I think, you know, I mean, the commission's goals are probably going to happen, after the new mayor's elected. So I mean, we can set up our goals with. I doubt they're gonna, change in a way that will affect us too much. So I think putting them on December is fine.
Okay.
They're generally generic anyway.
So with that being said, we're going to have a December meeting?
Well, let's take the poll right now. Who wants a December meeting?
Vance can't vote.
Anybody? Who doesn't
No.
want it?
Not
What day is
opposed
this
to
that
it.
we're talking
Yeah,
about?
That's what I was
December-
checking the
Would be
calendar.
December 15th.
Mike,
Can we limit it to the goals discussion, Henry? And
we
that way-
could. There's nothing wrong with that because we could have, if we could limit it to an hour on goals, which should be doable, I think. I think that would be sufficient.
Works for me.
Okay. I will schedule that meeting then.
But we'll also schedule an ending time of 7 o'clock.
6:15.
You don't want much discussion?
Well, I've been in too many of these meetings where, how shall I say that? People have been somewhat talkative,
That's important.
and just as soon get it squared away and over with.
All right. Well, with that in mind, then let's move on to the next article, which is basically saying farewell to Vance Tong and John Anderson. I reached out to my predecessor who used to run these meetings, Lisa, and asked her what we typically do when people leave. And I guess we give you guys cupcakes. I was gonna try to show up at your house, but with COVID, I was like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I want my
They've been-
cupcake.
They've been cupcakes and they've been hearty handshakes.
I'll get on my Uber Eats and send you a cupcake, Vance.
And at least one person had a group photo.
I guess Kim, didn't you schedule? I think I've got on my calendar a meeting with Vance and with John, right? And
Mhm.
I think Vance Walker. I don't remember if you're in there. Anyway, having kind of a debrief. I look forward to those. Usually we hear about how terrible we are, but that's okay. Again, for both of you guys, I appreciate the respectfulness and the ideas and the motions and the support. As a staff person, we're charged with holding these committee meetings and bringing content that is appropriate and hopefully interesting, and having volunteers to do this. I know it's not really, entertaining for sure. So anyway, I appreciate your volunteer hours, and I should have pulled how long each of you have served. I don't know. Did you know that? Do you know their dates?
Let me see if I can look
3
that up.
3 years. For Vance, I think John's been longer than that.
Yeah.
And so that's I guess
Like-
all I'll say.
John Anderson's he was appointed in 2012.
Wow.
Well, I would like to say that I am very glad to have served with both of these people. I've kind of enjoyed my time with John Anderson and with Vance both, and I hope they both do well.
Well, it's time for a little change, something new under the sun. But
Maybe you can go skiing.
It was a pleasure working on it, particularly when we're working with the transportation plan.
And I want to extend my thanks to both of you, and to everybody else who's serving for that matter, because it's a certain amount of time and effort and commitment to actually do that.
Yep.
I think John's made more motions than any member, which I appreciate because lots of times we do a lot of discussion and we have good, informed and meaningful discussion, but we don't close with a motion. And so I might reach out to some of you from time to time to say, can we get you to make a motion? John always offers. So he's usually leading the effort on that.
But he's got to take the baton.
Experience shows.
All right. It's good seeing all you, Dana and Vance and Kim. Thank you for supporting that because I needed it.
You bet.
Other than that,
And hey, Vance Tong and John Anderson, yes, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Mhm.
And John Anderson, I'll vote for you for mayor when you run.
What, you won't vote for me?
Oh, geez.
I said, John Anderson, I'll vote for you for mayor. I'd even vote for you, Tom.
Ugh.
All right, Henry, you want to?
Anything left? Is this time for me to say it's time to go home?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second.
Everybody who wants to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Everybody who was opposed, say no. Any abstainers? We're adjourned.
Take care,
Bye.
folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.